Thank you very much. So, for anyone who doesn't know me, my name is Cameron. I'm the director of this film, Empathy and Eternity. I'm just going to take a few minutes before starting the screening to introduce it. Empathy and Eternity, I'm also going to try not to get super emotional, but I might. So, it's a multi-layered story driven by the grapple that we face with time. My father's years as a World War II evacuee and how it informed his identity as a child and throughout his life. My own journey through loss in a decade after his death and the passing of the torch across generations. The story melts prose, poetry, archive and interview into a poignant search for hope and understanding. In telling these historical stories, we work closely with key stakeholders such as churches, shops and museums and local communities, so the film is equally a result of and the celebration of these individuals and places. I wrote Empathy and Eternity, which is my debut film, whilst living up north and being out of work due to depression. The quest to tell this lost story was nothing short of a lifeline. Me and my brother Leo went on our pilgrimage to the area where our father was evacuated in Shropshire in 2022, and my research into my father's experiences deepened from there. We shot the film at the end of July into the beginning of August last year and finished post-production in June of this year. I've always bound myself to my father's legacy and what it means to me. History, poetry, and emotional power. I know how proud he'd be that I've helped to eternalize this story, and my hope is that other people, particularly younger generations, may become more interested in forms of salvage, gently encouraging the same archivist mentality that I've inherited and treasure. The film has a few messages that I'd like to briefly touch on, political and personal. Firstly, I hope to convey the perennial nature of war's tragic effects on children, from World War II to ongoing conflicts in Ukraine, Palestine and more. Children can suffer complex trauma which may strongly alter the course of their lives and those of their descendants. It's for this reason that it's vital to financially, morally and publicly support victims of war across the world, and I'd like to take the opportunity to express my solidarity with all these victims. Secondly, having struggled with depression for years, the making of this film was one of the main conduits to me feeling the greatest sense of peace, closure and accomplishment. In the search for hope and light, I'm very grateful to my family, to my friends and my collaborators for the conversation, support and labour that have gone not only into this film but into myself. There is a deep message in the film of respect, love, empathy, curiosity and admiration as a foundation for human relationships. This is particularly salient in the father-son relationship but also in the wider family ties explored in the film. Navigating the loss of my father and looking back on his life was a way of honouring his legacy and his impact upon me and the rest of our family. Beyond my father, there's a deference to elders and history embedded in the film, including my older half-brother Bjorn and my auntie Viv in the voice roles was a further way of engaging with older generations, their stories, experiences and perspectives. Informal conversations with family members offered new perspectives and insight into my father's life and the fabric of the family, and the process brought us all closer together. There's a reminder there to appreciate the eternality of love for families, for friends and for partners, and the juxtaposed transience of life. The film's 40 minutes long, and there'll be time afterwards to ask any questions you like in the Q&A with the panel. I'd like to extend my deep thanks and gratitude to everyone at set, and particularly Dylan and Verity, who've really helped me and been very receptive to wanting to screen Empathy and Eternity here. It's fantastic to see such wonderful places in the community, and it's an honour to be a part of it for the evening. Thank you very much all for coming, and I really hope that you enjoy the film. design in the post-production. Then we have Beatriz Azevedo, who did the kind of assembly editing. And then we have James, who kind of did the refining of that edit and the color grading, as well as the original kind of directing of photography. And then we have Juliet Merchant, who composed the score for the film. And that's all of us. So we just want to open the floor, see if you guys have any questions, and chat. And yeah, does anyone have any questions? Yeah, man.
A lot of the writing that was read as your dad was very poetic. Was that just unedited, and was he a poet?
Yeah, that was all verbatim. So it's all taken. I've got one. It's all taken from recollections that he wrote as a kind of old man, as I pointed to in the kind of title cards. He was kind of a philosopher in his old age and ran this website, which kind of just went down after he passed away, which was 2013. But I managed to revive it, and I used that as the source material for the film. So that's why in the credits he's credited as a co-writer, because everything that he wrote is unchanged completely. And it's voiced by Bjorn, my half-brother, who's about 55, who's obviously, as you can hear, a proper Scouser. Yeah, as my dad was. And to answer the last point of that, I think that the experiences that he had, that we've as a team pointed towards in the film, show that kind of archivist mentality, and there's also a very deep sense of empathy embedded within that. And I think that those are the kind of natural qualities that you need as a poet. So I would definitely say that he was a poet, as am I. Hopefully.
The answer was yes.
Yes, the answer was yes. Hayden.
Hey Cameron, firstly thank you for sharing the story and experience as well. I just wanted to know when you decided you wanted to retell this story for your blog.
So yeah, me and my brother Leo originally went on this pilgrimage in 2022 in early September. And yeah, it was an incredible time retracing all these steps and kind of entering into this magical poetic realm that almost seemed beyond the reaches of what's possible in the reality that we all kind of live in day to day, you know. And yeah, I've been writing poetry for, I guess, around 11 years now. And I obviously had an absolutely incredible time there and connected with so many incredible people within the community who really helped the making of this film. And I kind of had the idea of making it into some sort of written epic, you know, some sort of long poem, something like that. But as you can hopefully see in the film, as we hopefully get across, Shropshire is an absolutely beautiful place, you know, incredible rolling hills, incredible communities that have a lot of traditions and are very tight-knit. And I think ultimately it was the visual beauty of the place that made me realize, I think being the operative word, that I had to make a film, which encompassed a lot of being like, you know, fuck, what am I gonna do? Like, I have no money, I've never used a fucking digital camera in my life. What do I do? Do you know what I mean? It kind of dawned on me. So that was how it originally happened, and then the rest is obviously all the amazing people that contributed, some of whom are here today, people within the community, this incredible team, and yeah, other people, you know. So that was kind of what made it have to be a film, you know. And again, it's worth reiterating that, you know, I have experience writing, but none of this would have been possible without these guys who sat here with me today. So I just want to big them all up. Can we all give them a round of applause? Cheers, cheers, cheers. Yeah. Cool. Yes.
Did they maybe say something about their reasons for wanting to be involved? And remember to pass the mic.
Hello, I'm James. So I'd met Cameron at university in St Andrews, but to be honest, we didn't actually know each other that well at university. This film has been an opportunity for me to really get to know Cameron. So arriving on set was kind of my first. I'd read the script, but arriving on set and seeing this beautiful scenery and seeing the potential for capturing that on film was really my introduction to the story in visceral terms. So I think the moment where that really hit me, the sort of privilege it was to be there, was the moment where we were interviewing Raymond, and just that twinkle in his eye, and just seeing this story that is so important to him and it's so important to the place that he's in. But that story would not otherwise be told if we weren't asking him these questions and giving him the framing to tell that story. So that was the moment where it really clicked for me, and from that moment on I was really locked in, and it felt really important to just give it everything I could and to just capture the frames that were supposed to be captured. So just thank you, Cameron, for the opportunity. It was a lot of fun, and also it was profound as well.
Okay, so me and Cameron met in Russia many years ago now, and I suppose actually it all started then, because that's when I got to know you, and that's kind of when we found out that we have a shared history of losing our fathers at a young age. It's emotional being up here, So Cameron, after, it must have been 6 years of knowing you, gives me a little message, goes, I'm going to be making a film. And I was like, oh, that sounds cool. Not sure. We'll talk about it more. And then we meet up. And let's just say I completely was convinced in that moment that I just had a very important role to play. And I just think me and Cameron, we have different ways of processing our grief. And it felt like this. Of course, it's your journey, but it felt that I also went through a journey on this as well, of understanding grief and understanding that it's a lifelong thing, and as an adult, how on earth we process that when things happen so young. So I think that's very much what my music is about. It's of course dedicated to Cameron and his father, but I think a really central part of it is also my own experience and my own processing of maybe what is happening. And I just feel so grateful that Cameron's just, it seems, unlimited passion and energy and creativity towards this project has created something so profoundly beautiful in an emotional sense, and of course exploring this community as well. Why this project was important to me is sort of a no-brainer. I think it just is, if that is a good explanation. So thank you for creating this.
Thank you.
So everybody can share.
Thank you for creating this as well.
Hello. So I did some of the editing on this film, and I met Cameron at uni, where we were both sort of engaged in our own creative pursuits that never really overlapped. Cam was doing music and poetry at the time and writing, and I was doing sort of like theatre and video things. And then we sort of lost touch a little bit after uni, and we sort of got back in contact. I can't remember if we were in contact anyway. I think we'd met up like a couple of times to sort of say hello again. But then you asked me to be involved in the film, and it just seemed like a really good opportunity to collaborate collaborate creatively in a way that we'd never done before. And through that sort of rekindled our friendship in a way, which I've really appreciated. And yeah, I do editing in video sort of for my job, but I don't work on anything that is this, has so much heart in it and has somebody's sort of personal story behind it. And so many people coming together sort of purely out of the joy of wanting to contribute to the story. So it's been a real privilege for me to work on something like this. Yeah, that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
I said I wasn't gonna speak, but yeah. So we live together, and I work in the sound department for film and TV, and he just asked me if I wanted to do the sound design, and I said yes, and that's it.
Nice. Yeah, Alex.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alex, for supporting the film, by the way. Yeah. That £10 got you a round of applause.
That was very beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I want to just ask, how did you find engaging with people in these communities that you went and visited, and what was that like?
Yeah, I mean, so it was two very different experiences. The first time I went there with my brother Leo, and when we went there to film. The first time we went there, it was very much kind of discovery and making our connections for the first time. And obviously, I was quite organised in the sense of wanting to get to the bottom of things, but I was very open at the same time, and I generally found a huge amount of receptivity within the community. People were incredibly open to these conversations, to these inquiries. They were quite aware of the history, which in many senses was very much still alive. As you could see with Raymond, there was living links to Charlie Horton and Edith, who took care of my father. And, you know, other people, Diana Morris, the third person who took care of my father, and also Miss Maddox, the second person who took care of him. All of these people, I met people who directly knew them, who maybe worked with them, all of these things. So it was incredible to see in the first instance that these were still living threads connecting to the people who were connected to my dad. And, you know, I mean, Boriston Mill, for example, a house built in around 1530, you know, predating Shakespeare. We literally just turned up at the door and knocked on it, you know, like, yeah, man, like, oh yeah, our dad was evacuated here. And they were like, oh yeah, damn, we've got, we heard he came here in the 90s. And he opened this gin cabinet and looked in, and that was the original wallpaper that was there. And we opened it and saw the same wallpaper, you know, in the same places, in the same ways. So that was absolutely incredible. And just these kind of, poetic realms, you know, the church that always lies open, and the lich gates, and all of these incredibly poetically laden places that I just had no awareness of. Me and my brother also hitchhiked everywhere, no money. So, you know, we met absolutely incredible people just hitchhiking as well, who were also credited. Damson distillers and all this kind of stuff. So that was all amazing. And then when we went there to film, it was very much the same. It was also different though, you know, we were incredibly welcomed. Everyone was aware of what we were doing. It's a very small place. A few young people running around with cameras, beers and joints is quite conspicuous in that kind of community. So, you know, yeah, a lot of people were approaching us, particularly me, obviously, and you know, I was engaging with them, and yeah, they were incredibly happy to talk about things, give us last-minute access to a lot of spots. A lot, you know, word traveled quite fast. People let us film in a lot of places as well. Like the confrontation scene was just filmed in a pub in the middle of the day. The selection scene was not filmed in the school, but in the pump rooms, because in the Victorian period it was like a spa town. hence the word wells, which kind of denotes these Victorian kind of spa towns. Yeah, so people were incredibly nice and really went out of their way to help us. And to have all these people within the community was one thing, but to have living, embodied and active relationships with the people that inhabited the same spaces, that was incredibly special, you know. And for example, when we filmed in Boriston, the penultimate scene in the church where you open the door and the elegy to George starts, when we filmed there and James was playing the violin and Juliet was playing the organ, the church warden was there with her husband. The lady Rachel, who lives at Boriston Mill where my dad lived, was sat outside, you know, in the dark. The church was lit from the inside. You could just hear this beautiful music, and you know, the church warden says this is really once in a lifetime. So it's also a two-way thing, you know. They saw something that was incredibly rare, and I think that showed so much respect and admiration for what they've been through and what they live and their stories, that it was only right that it was reciprocated. And that was incredibly fulfilling for all of us, I think. And that was something I was worried about as well, you know, that James alluded to the fact we hadn't met, you know, in person basically, apart from a little bit here and there at uni. And it was, you know, it was very low budget. It was less than £1,000, ferrying everyone about, long days. I was really worried that no one else would feel that magic, but everyone did, you know, despite all of the financial challenges, the time constraints, all of this stuff. So we're really looking forward to going there in August and screening the film in Shropshire, in the village where he was evacuated, and hopefully reconnecting with everyone. So yeah, it was beautiful. Yeah. Yeah.
First of all, thank you. It was so beautiful, and the soundtrack is fantastic. And it really feels like it was a ritual in a way, and it feels like it was a transformative piece of art. Like it feels like you went on a journey of exploration, of like maybe digging into things that you didn't know or like didn't expect as well, in a way. And you know, I never knew my father very well, and like I'm considering myself going on this kind of journey, like try to uncover something, you know. And I feel like, you know, engaging with this creative process can be, I always see it as a very transformational thing, and it moves the energy around you, it moves the energy of the place that you go to on your own, and it just like creates this like, you know, swoop, almost like it transforms people's lives. And I'm curious to ask you, what did you feel, how did your relationship with your father change after, like, in the process of exploration, and how did your view on ancestry and relation, like, I guess generational passage of knowledge and legacy, how did the making of this film affect that?
Yeah, there are multiple facets to that question really, because, you know, after the actual filming of it, which obviously entailed around a week of incredibly intense work with James, Juliet, Tara, who was producing the film as well. That was one thing, but then, for example, me and B were sat down for hours and hours, multiple times, doing the assembly edit and discussing loads of things, and so much work went into that part. Juliet had done a lot of the score on set, you know, but still having conversations afterwards. Then there was the work that me and James were doing, where James was doing the kind of refining edit and the colour grading, all the conversations, me watching the film back dozens and dozens and dozens of times just to see all these tiny things here and there and there. And then sitting down with Goncalo as well and doing all the sound design, which was, you know, quite a few sessions. That's also definitely like dozens of hours. All of these things cumulatively are hundreds of hours, really. So there's the element of making the film itself, which is the first part of the response to that question, where I feel like it's something I've been saying to people is it's hard to tell to what degree it's closure and hard to tell to what degree it's overexposure. So, yeah, like I've watched it so many fucking times basically that I'm over it. No, but I'm not over it. I still cried, as you all saw. But yeah, so I think in that sense, you know, all of the people who came together to crystallize it in the team, in the community, and myself at that time, those people no longer exist. Those spaces no longer exist in the way that they did. And in that sense, I don't know whether I could make this film now. You know, I alluded to my history of depression, which I would no longer, you know, say is the case. And that's a huge blessing. But in a way, to be honest, I think that that means I couldn't make this film anymore. So there's all that kind of stuff that means that I see this as a kind of archive, not just for myself at that time and the people who are involved, but whoever is to come and whoever is interested in following this trail as I've done, but in their own way. And also, to kind of give the second part of the response to that question, before the making of the film, you know, the kind of photographs that you see within the film and all that stuff, that's all taken from our family archives, some of which is shown in the exhibition, which you can all see in a bit. But yeah, you know, this is a huge book. It's like this big. It's got two screws that are like this long. I don't know how my dad did it. And it's got all the photographs and all the recollections. And I went to Wales to see my half-sister Freya, who's kind of the archivist of the, you know, my dad's first wife and the family that they had. And that in of itself was an incredible opportunity to connect and, you know, make these connections within the family that didn't really exist. I'd only met them at my dad's funeral, really. But that's quite multifaceted, really. That's not wholly positive, you know. I think that, and it's a conversation I've had multiple times with members of the family recently, you know, the being torn between these two women, and also it's not really explored in the film, but having an incredibly absent father that he only saw once during the war and very much a broken family, affected my father in a lot of ways that led to, you know, extramarital behaviour and stuff like that that I wasn't really aware of as a younger child, not in his marriage to my mother, but before that. And that stuff is more, you know, unsavoury, and it's, I think, putting it within the frame of his experiences and so on, it becomes more understandable, but it doesn't necessarily become more justifiable. So I think that it's really complex on many levels, you know. I wouldn't necessarily say that it gave me a better perception of my father, but I would say it's the closest I could ever become, or closest I could ever come to understanding him. And that also is why he originally left these records. As he says in his archives, it's an attempt to explain so that those to come can understand the often inadequate fatherly entity that he was. And he was very distant and embroiled in his own kind of thoughts. And I think that that's very understandable why, you know. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. Yeah, yes, my boy.
Yeah, brilliant film, well done, everyone on the team. This is a question for all of you, I guess. There was a scene I was really interested, there was sort of bees pollinating around the landscape. And it made me sort of think about the idea of where sort of we come from, where we end up, and what will happen after that in a way. Through kind of the making of this film, has it changed your perspective of your relationship with kind of trauma and landscape? And going on to maybe what's going on at the moment, will that lead you on to thinking about filmmaking in a different way?
Well, I can't speak for the others, but I suppose I'll speak first and say that, as I mentioned in my initial kind of introduction, the film, I think, hopefully is a reminder within a different context of the trauma of war, especially for children, and, you know, the genocide that's happening in Palestine and the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, both of which I condemn. amongst other horrible things that are happening in the world. I just hope that this film in some way can serve as a kind of counterpoint to the oversaturation that we often face within the media with regards to these massacres and horrible things that are happening, and kind of through, you know, a British experience that maybe people can kind of relate to in a different way, landscapes that people can relate to in a different way, accents that people can relate to in a different way, just kind of reiterate the commonality, I suppose, of the trauma that you just mentioned, the landscapes that you just mentioned, and ultimately, hopefully, deepen a sense of solidarity with all peoples, you know? That's the communist in me coming out, but, you know, my dad was also a communist, so, yeah, and I think that the film serves that point well, and that's why I said that in the introduction. And monies from this event, as well as from the party that I'm throwing on Saturday, will be going towards relief for Ukraine and Palestine. So, yeah. I don't know if anyone else has any remarks on that point, but
just on the topic of sort of what's beyond, I guess. That was a lot of the themes of the films didn't really. I'd read the script, but it wasn't really until I was actually sitting down in the editing room that a lot of the themes really came alive, and that was one of the ones that really hit me. And again, it started with the Raymond interview, that bit where this weird sort of contrast of him saying that he's a Christian but he's not religious, and this idea that this man who's dedicated the last 15, 20 years of his life to this beautiful church would do so while not believing in something beyond. And he said, "I'll be buried out in that churchyard," and that's the end of the story. That for me, that hit hard, and like every time I probably watched that, I don't know, dozens of times, but I feel like that in itself captures something that's really important in the film. It's that questioning of, why are we doing this? Why are we preserving this? Are we preserving this just because we get to preserve it once, or is there something beyond the preservation process? So that felt really important for me in the editing.
I think musically, a significant part of the music was that I was on set and I was in those churches, and some of those shots I'm actually hiding away in the corner and you can't actually see me, and I'm just secretly under, like there's a...
in the pulpit.
Yeah, in the pulpit.
All those scenes Juliet was in there on Ableton.
Just with like a tiny piano, just like, I don't know, actually that's when the vocal theme actually was created in that pulpit. And no, it's not very like a romanticized being in a dusty pulpit on the floor trying to hide from view, but it did really make clear how important being within the energy of a space is, and that we can never, I suppose talking about kind of like beyond, like kind of once something's happened in a space, there's always that energy in a space. And I think once you've connected with somebody energetically, they're always there energetically in that kind of way. I'm a strong believer in energy, and just as you've had this relationship with your father, whilst he's not with us anymore, he lives within you. And this film lives within all of those places now that you have. I think, yeah, that's just my answer to your question. But yeah, it was great to be on set and to see all those places again. And I'm excited to go back and to see how things have changed as well.
You want to say anything?
Yeah, I would just say just quickly, like when you're saying about how like our relationship to filmmaking could change through considering that aspect of what comes beyond. And I think that this film definitely acts as not just elegy, but in terms of preserving memory. That's always been quite strong in my view of filmmaking and photography, as you well know. That sense of leaving something beyond, because I agree with Raymond, once you're in the ground, that's kind of it. But this is like our way of preserving, I guess, yeah.
Goncalo, anything you want to add?
I'm fine.
Yeah. Good. Nice. Any more questions?
Can you tell us?
The exhibit, you can see it after obviously, but it features a lot of behind the scenes photography from the shooting of the film, as well as photography from the original pilgrimage from me and Leo. It also features artworks made by different friends, film posters, event posters, screen printed stuff, as well as the brass rubbing that is in the film, custom framed, which I hope you like because I paid a lot of money for it. My mum did an incredible job of helping me put it together, so I sort of just been a lot of work. She's been incredible, so thank you, Mum. That's the exhibition, but you can see it for yourselves and hope you like it. Yeah. Hayden?
The song that has recently been released in conjunction with this film,
Yeah.
was it always intended as a song, and was the timing of its release intentional, or was that a later realization?
Can you repeat the question? What was the question?
So the song that you released.
Was the timing intentional?
I
was always meant to be a song.
The timing of its release, was that intentional?
Yeah. It was always going to be a song. The beat maker is actually Ukrainian, and as Juliet alluded to, we studied in Russia, and I'm a Russian speaker. Ukrainian is fairly similar, and I have a lot of solidarity for Ukraine. So I don't know how I found him, but we got talking a lot. It was fairly early into the invasion, so I was offering him if he needed to come, basically, and sort him out. So I got that beat. I really liked it, and it's a bit of a different conversation, really. But obviously, I've been releasing music for 5 years now, rapping, and rap is always the most organic medium for me musically as a poet. I made it in 2022, that song, Evacuation, and it alludes to the plans to go there. Obviously, I didn't know what it was going to turn out to be, but the timing was incredibly intentional. The whole kind of run up to the screening, everything was planned and coordinated, and I wanted that to kind of be the last note, before the day of the screening, to say, here's a record of what I intended to do, and I have managed to do everything that I set out to do. And as I said to you earlier, that the only authority that ever mattered to me in the making of this was that my father, and going to his grave at the end of the film and saying, I've done right by you. And I did that the other week after the screening in Southport. I went there, I laid a poster there, I put stones on it, let the rain take it, I've done what I intended to do. So that's just to commemorate the record of the kind of start of that journey, really, and to say, in a way, now it's over, man.
You repeatedly referred to your first journey there as a pilgrimage, and as the first gentleman spoke, he talked about being Christian but not being religious, and there was the churches. I don't know, I felt like there was a theme of religion, or maybe beyond religion, spirituality throughout that. Maybe you could say a little bit about where that came from and what that means to you in the film.
Yeah, don't really know where you got that, to be honest. Don't think there is an incredible sense of spirituality and reverence for those places within the film, and I think it's worth qualifying as a background that we were raised in an atheist household. There wasn't much of a Christian background. In fact, my father was a communist, so he's an incredibly militant atheist. And that definitely affected my early views of religion. As a teenager, I was kind of a classic teenage atheist on Reddit, But Yeah, I think that, to be honest with you, it's really the depression that led me to those places. Places of solitude, places of contemplation that I think, regardless of whether you identify as religious or not, are built with such incredible craftsmanship and yearning towards the divine that it's impossible not to find some sort of sense of catharsis within them. And I did, you know, before the making of this film as well. I was spending a lot of time in churches, you know, on my own. And that almost seems quite foreign to me now, in a way, to even see myself within those spaces at that time, and to understand what it meant to me, and to know that also that was a recreation of the original pilgrimage. So I have a lot of respect for those places, and also for the people who maintain them. And I'm incredibly grateful, as I think they also are, that those places are represented within the film. And I would identify definitely as very spiritual in my own way. And I think that this film is essentially the zenith, you know, the best possible representation of the spirituality and divinity that I suppose I aspire towards. Big words. Is that all? Anyone else feel left out? Want to ask anything? Are we all good? Sound. All right, well, get a drink, enjoy the exhibit, it's behind the stage, and let's have a nice evening. And thank you for coming. Thank you.
So nice to meet you finally.
Very
well.
Yeah.
Amazing work.
Good lad. I'm recording
this, so I don't really know how to.
Yeah, nice one.
I'm recording our conversation.